Brian with GameRoomSolutions.com, and today I'm going to show you a more in-depth video on how to connect up your control panel. This could apply to any control panel really that you do, whether it's on our bartop arcade that I'm going to do it on here, or on anything if you're refurbing one, building one from scratch, whatever. So essentially, at least with our kit, you got your control panel here, and then you also have your button panel as well. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead, if we didn't lay the art on for you, go ahead and lay the artwork on, put the Plex on top of it, on both of those pieces. And then once that's done, you'll want to take your button here, push it through. You can see here where the joystick's going to go. Just take your knife and cut an X, so that way there's a hole there. And then you can essentially just push your button through. Same thing for your joystick. So you push your buttons through. This is going to come with a nut as well. So you just screw the nut on the back and you'll lock all those in. Essentially you want to put them all at an angle too. So you can see how those are angled there. So you'll want to angle them all as you tighten them down. And make sure and tighten them down good, because you definitely don't want to have to take this thing back apart to get to that. And it's a pretty tight fit just to work with it when it's all put together. So besides the button there, you get the with the standard arcade buttons, you'll just essentially you'll essentially just snap the micro switch on, so that way it trips it when you do it. After you screw those in, if it's one of the LED ones, you'll have a lamp with it, and essentially you just want to lock it in. There's holes in the side of the micro switch that'll just click into place like that. And then you'll put your LED light in, like that. And of course, if they're color, you have a color. And then, so once you have those locked in, you'll just come here and you'll see how they line up, and you just turn them, and they'll click into place. So you'll want to, that's the first step there. So you want to go in, get all the colors of buttons in, all the colored LEDs that you want, get the micro switches on in the lamp, and get everything set up just like this. The next step you're going to want to do, depending on if you got, with our kits, we have our sandwall joysticks, which all I did is just take the dust cover off. Or if you got the zippy joystick or the LED joystick, they're all made to fit this kit precisely. They also come with all the hardware as well. So essentially, they're going to come with a screw, a nut, and then a washer. And what you're going to want to do, don't worry about the ball top and take the dust cover off, like I said. Essentially, you can see this. You'll just want to put it in, and you see for the sandwalls, this is where they hook up. I usually try to put that to the inside. And you can see the holes there line up perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through, and on a lot of my builds, I'll take these black screws and I'll just put them into something, and I'll just spray paint them real quick so they're black instead of the silver. But since this is definitely a silver theme, it's going to even have a silver T-molding on it and stuff, or chrome T-molding. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to push those through and get those through so the joystick's in place, and then I'm going to screw the nut on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so you can see that I got the nuts in for the joysticks. So now they're ready to go. Okay, so now for some of the fundamentals of how to put this thing together. So with this, you'll get the 2-player harness, a USB cable, so that way you can hook it into your PC or your Pi or whatever, an LED harness that comes with a Molex, but you can also clip that off and run it to any 12-volt adapter to get your lights going, and the USB encoder here. So what this USB encoder is, you can see here that it has pins on it. Let me focus in. That it has pins on it, and then of course a USB connection. So essentially those pins, and we'll have this in the description and on the website and everything else, this is the correlation from these pins of what they actually control. So with our bartop kits, we include a Raspberry Pi 2 image that you can just flash a micro SD card, and that way you don't have to worry about configuring controls or anything. It's all done for you. And if you hook up the controls like this, where you can see, So here's the player 1 side, the player 2 side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So all of that would be on the player 1. So essentially for button 1 here, I would plug that into here on the board. So again, with the micro switch, I'm going to plug in this one. That's the one that's going to plug in to number 1 on this board, which is that one right there. So we'll go through. So that's essentially what I'm going to do here. This is going to be a Raspberry Pi 2 build. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to wire up my control panel just like this, starting with the connectors here. So just to show you, there's a lot of these that are the 4 prongs that will connect into the board. So I can go ahead and again use my guide here. And with the USB on the bottom, I can see player 1. Player 1 is right here. These 4 is player 1 through 4. So I can go ahead and just plug that in right there. Just like that. And what I'll do is I'll just take the one that says player 1 right here, and I will hook it into that switch to what is player 1, button 1 right here. You can do this backwards really easily if it's just like this. So typically, go ahead and flip it over and just verify. See that? Because sometimes you'll have it upside down. So this is button 1 right here of player 1. So that's going to correlate closest to the joystick to right here. So essentially I'm going to come in and I'm just going to connect that onto button 1. And then I can just follow my lines here on this harness. So this would be button 2. So again, across the top's 1, 2, 3, and across the bottom's 4, 5, 6. So here's button 3. Right there. And again, I'm on the longer switch, not on the very bottom, but on the side. So again, 1, 2, 3, this will be 4 here. So I can come in and hook this in. And you can see now why you want these kind of angled. It's a lot easier to get to. So again, I'll grab another one of these supplied connector harnesses here. Follow my guide. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. So it's just going to continue on 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to plug that in. Grab my 5, which is the first one on this one. And if it's hard to get to one, it's easy. Just click it out, plug it in, and then go ahead and click it back in so you don't get confused where the stuff goes. So 5. So here's 6. Right there. Now I have 7 and 8, and I don't want to be confused on that. So again, if I refer to my chart here on player 1, I want it 7, 8. So 7 will be over the middle buttons. So I can quickly just pick this up, turn it around, and say, okay, I want this one right here, 7, and that's 8. So go back to my cables. This one's 7, and this one's 8, right here. So you can see how this can get messy kind of quick. So you want to kind of just keep your wiring pretty clean, and then really clean it up at the end. So that's 7 and 8. So there's player 1 side as far as your player buttons here, and I'm going to look. Here's one here that just has 2 prongs on it. I'll use it for now. But again, back to this. On the player 1 side, I want 9 and 10, and on the player 2 side, I want 11 and 12. The Raspberry Pi just seems to behave better that way. So you can see here, I'll use the 9 and 10 on this. The 9 and 10 on this side, and then the 11 and 12 on that side. Okay, one thing I noticed since I've been looking at the camera here more than what I'm doing, this is the player 2 side, but I hooked up the player 1 side there. It's no big deal because all I have to do is just take off this one set up as 1, 2, 3, 4, and I just have to put it on the 1's player side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing with the 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's that easy. So again, I knew where it went just by referring to this. So now I need to use 9 and 10, which is the top 2 on that side. So I'll hook those in here. And so this top one is 10, the bottom one's 9. What I'm going to go ahead and do so I don't get confused, I've left this off so you guys can see it. But again, our bar top is all cam lock system. So you can see everything's pre-cut. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and put the button panel on just to make sure I have room for all of my connections. So that'll just fit on like that. And I'll take my screwdriver here, and all I have to do is just tighten that cam lock. And the entire cabinet goes together like this, so it's really easy to do. Clean and easy. So you can see there's that. So again, if I refer back to my chart right here, 9 and 10. So this is 9, this is 10. So I know this far one on the right here is 9. So go back to my board where I plug those in. And again, it's best just to have a printout of this stuff so you can quickly refer to it. So this one's 9 and 10. So now I have the player 1 pins completely hooked up. As far as the action button there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and quickly hook up the other side. Okay, so now I have all of player 2 hooked up along with the 11 and 12 from player 2 for my menu and play, at least on our Raspberry Pi image. The next thing I want to talk about is the joysticks. So with the Zippy joystick, you can see here it essentially just has micro switches on each of the corners. So it'd be the same thing. This would be your action, and then this down here would be your ground. And depending on which way you mount it in there, you know, if you're mounting it this way or this way, it doesn't matter. But what you're going to have to do to figure it out is obviously if I push up, it's clicking a switch down here. So if I flip it over, it would be this one here. So that would be my up right here. So I would hook my up into there, and then I'd do the same thing and go right and say, okay, which one am I hitting? So I'm hitting this one right here. So that would be my right, and so on and so forth. So for the Zippy, that's what you do. I'm going to show the ground in a second, but for the ground, essentially, you would just put the 4 around here. You need 4 grounds, 1 for each micro switch, no different than the buttons, and then you would do that. For the SandWAs or for the LED joysticks, they actually have a little wiring harness that comes with them here. So you'll snap that in. This one, again, it depends on which way you do it to which wire will end up doing what, because obviously if you have it mounted this way, up would be different than if you turned it over, then that would make it down. But what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and the black wire is going to be my ground. I want to make sure that I have the ground wire available. I'm not too worried about hooking the up, down, left, right yet, and I'll show you why in a minute, because there's an easier way just to troubleshoot it. So essentially for these, that'll just click on there. Here's the other one. So I'm just going to bring it down and click it on this one. And again, this cabinet's designed for any of these joysticks we offer, but these SandWAs, so everything fits perfectly. Like that. Alright, so now let's talk about the ground. So we have our action buttons. Again, use the pins here to determine what we wanted the actions to be with our Raspberry Pi 2 image, or the same setup. This is pretty universal, like if you want to use Hyperspin or whatever. This is a good way to hook up these control panels. So the next thing we want to do is we got to ground everything. So you can see here on the board, there's 3 ground pins. It really doesn't matter which one any of this goes into the ground. What matters is as long as everything's hooked into ground. So with this comes a daisy chain, and the daisy chain just has the one connector here. You can see, and that one connector will just plug into the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go through here. I can go ahead and plug in the ground just so I know. Go ahead and let that go. I can pick this up, you know, turn it to where it faces my picture how I want it, and say, okay, well the player 1 ground is this pin right here, so I'm going to go ahead and hook into that. And again, it doesn't matter as long as you do the ground. You might leave one off just to give it a little bit of space, because this is actually going to mount back in the cabinet this direction. So I could go ahead and flip it that way. And again, now I'm just on the top connectors here. And I'd hooked one up wrong, you can see. In my so again, there's the action button there. And see how much easier it is if you just pull them out if you need to and then click them back in. So now I can just go through and connect up my ground. And what you want to do is make sure and think of the next button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave a ground wire here for this. If I had the zippy joysticks, I would go ahead and do the grounds around those 4 connectors. But since it's the sand walls or the LEDs, I just have to hook to the one. So I'm going to go ahead and leave one of the grounds available for that. And just always kind of be thinking about where's the next place you're going to plug it in, so you can have a little bit of a strategy. I'm trying to keep this the least amount of bird's nests as possible, but you know, with any control panel, it's just hard because there's connections and there's wires. So you can see here, here's another one that, as I was going through, plugged into the wrong one. They just come right off and plug right in. You go ahead and plug the ground in too while that's off. Hook it in. You can see I don't have a lot of room to plug that bottom one in, so I can take the top one out if I need to and click that in and then click this one back in. So it's pretty easy. Don't make it hard. So again, I can just, it doesn't matter if it's 1 player or 2 player for the ground. So I'm just going to go in and continually hook up all the ground connections. So this will work. I'll actually put these 2 here and leave those others available for the joystick there, those grounds. So now I'm going to take the other harness real quick, and I'm going to do the same thing on the rest of the buttons. Okay, so I finished hooking up all the ground cables, and what I also did is I stripped off a little more of the wire on the black wire because I know that one is ground, and I ran that into one of the ground, and you know, that's a connector and that's just a bare wire, so I just electrical taped them together. So now the easiest thing to do, and whether you're going to use a Raspberry Pi or a Windows PC or whatever, if you have a laptop or something laying around, this is easy. You can go through and do this in Raspberry Pi to test all the connections, but it's much easier on a Windows PC. Okay, so what I did is I went ahead and took the provided USB cable, plugged it into my board here, and then plugged it into the PC. And you want to go into control panel, and trust me, you'll want to do this before you put everything together, because if you put everything together on this bar top and there's a button that's not quite hooked up right or something's backwards, it's really easiest since it's cam lock just to lay the thing on its side and take it apart so you can get back access to this. But again, it's best, I would much rather just have everything done and know it's going to work, so when I lean that bar top up and I turn it on, everything's working. So just go into control panel here, devices and printers, and you'll see the Zenmo. I'm going to right click on it, hit the game controller settings, and you can see here, since it's a 2-player, it shows up as 2 players. So I can press properties there, and essentially what that is, that's the joystick up, down, left, right, and then all the buttons. So I'm going to take the control panel here. I'm just going to push the button. Oh, hang on. Okay, here we go. And you can see there when I press button 1, button 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then remember these were 9 and 10, so 9 and 10. So those are all working. So I can close this. I'm going to go ahead and open up the second player here. Just double click it. And again, test it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My 6 is jammed up. 7, 8, so I know to fix that. 9, 10, or 11 and 12. So again, if the buttons aren't hooked up how you want or none of the buttons are working, make sure that you get all the buttons working first. And the next thing we're going to do is the joystick, to make sure that we have the joystick hooked up correctly. Okay, so now I want to do the joystick. So again, my player 1 pins, there's my up, down, left, right, and on my player 2 pins are over here. So what I did is I went ahead and took the connector and I hooked it up to where this is the down for player 1. Now sometimes this can get confusing on which ones this is, so what I'm going to do is in Windows, I'm going to go to player 1, and I'm just going to connect it. I have all these stripped, and the ground has to be connected. So I know that this is supposed to be down, so I'm just going to touch those 2 cables together. There's no electricity, so you'll be fine. And you can see there, when I go left, it's going up. So I know that the green wire is probably going to be left. But really I'm just looking for down. So it's not the red. It's not the yellow. So it's got to be the orange, right? So you can see there when I do that, it's actually going up. So I might have grabbed the wrong cable here, so that's no big deal. So let's check it. It looks like to me, oh, that's right, that's the up. Okay, so this is the up cable hooked into the board. And so now I just, again, there you go. So it's this red cable here. When I push up, I'm on up on the board, and you can see that little trigger right here is going up. So I know that's right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, push it through the connector, like that, and then I'll electrical tape that. So now I want to grab the down, and now I'll just do the same thing until I'm out of them. So nothing there. There you go, there's my down. So I'll go ahead and push that through, and then I'll electrical tape it here in a minute. There. And then my next one is, make sure these two here. So my next one should be, if I look at the chart, left. So I'll just hold the green one up. And there, that's left. And so the last one's right. So I'll go ahead and hook that one up. Do the same thing with player 2. But that to me is the easiest way to do this, just so you make sure it's right. Because again, I could tell guys that it's this color going this direction, but it'll just get confusing that way because some people will mount it this way, some people might mount it a different way. So the easiest way is if you have a laptop or something. Again, you can do this in the Raspberry Pi. There's I'll put a link on how to do it. But it's way easier on a Windows PC regardless of how you're hooking this thing up. So I'm going to go ahead and electrical tape those, finish hooking up the controls. I will go through here in Control Panel, and I will double check everything to make sure everything's working how I want it to be. Okay, so I got the all the controls are all tested and working. I got the SANWAs, I got them electrical taped off, so everything's good there. If you have regular arcade buttons, you're done at this point. You can put the rest of the cabinet together and get playing. If you did the LEDs, you got to go ahead and hook up the positive and negative to power so you can power those. So what I did is with our kit comes this harness, and it has a Molex connector. So if you're running a Windows PC, no big deal. You just plug it right into your power supply. You'll have 12 volt going through, and you're all set. If you're running a Raspberry Pi, essentially you just clip that off, strip the wires, get a 12 volt power supply. I don't know, they're $4 or $5 for a 12 volt power supply. Cut the end of it off and strip it, and then just connect up the positive and negative. That way you can just plug into your power strip in your unit to power those. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. And what you're going to want to do, it'll be a little difficult with the camera angle here, but find the ends, and you just got to think, okay, I'm going to start somewhere, I'm going to work my way around, and you want your power supply going back into the cabinet. So I'll just do this first button here. And what you're going to want to do is take your yellow and your black and just hold it up to the two sides. So again, your positive and negative are these big connectors on the side right here. So just hold it up there and make sure it turns on. If it doesn't turn on, that just means you have the polarity backwards. So you can either unsnap that and flip the bulb around, or you can just flip which ones that you plug them into. But if the thing lights up, then you just go ahead and plug those on. And then you just keep working your way to the next one. So you just grab the yellow and the black. You'll touch it and touch it. And you can see there that lit up, so just go ahead and plug it on. Do one more here to show you. You can see you'll end up with quite a few cables underneath here. That didn't light up, so all I had to do is I just plugged it in the other side. It lights right up. So that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to go through here with the LED joysticks. Essentially, just like these wires, you'll have a red and black wire coming for your power. So you'll just, tape those off for the red and the black, the red to the yellow, and the black to the black, and that'll light up your joystick as well. If you don't have that, you don't have to worry about it. So I'm just going to go through here, do all the buttons, and we're getting pretty close to wrapping this up. Alright, so I got all the LED lights hooked up. Everything looks good. Since I was messing with the wires to get these things lit, I would definitely go back in and retest all your functionality once you're done. The last steps you have here is you'll just take the dust guards here, put those on like that, and then you'll take your let's see if I have one here. Yeah. Then you'll take your joystick tops. You'll go ahead and you'll just they're just threaded, so they just go right on like that. Just screw them all the way down. So I'm going to go back in and retest this. I'll take some stuff and go in and clean up all the wires and everything, and then past that I'm ready to lock this sucker in. And since again I went to my guide here, I know that when I use my Raspberry Pi image and boot it up, that it's already going to work with all the emulators and emulation station and all that right out of the box, so there's nothing I'm going to have to do other than plug everything in and turn it on. So again, GameRoomSolutions.com. Make sure and like this video. Visit us. Our bartop arcade kits start at $219, and that's delivered. That includes shipping. You can add the graphics package like you can see here. You can add the controls that you see here. Again, it comes with the Photoshop files to do the to do your graphics. We also have a bunch of customer graphics that you can do as well. You can just say I want that one, and then these control kits. So GameRoomSolutions.com. Make sure and like the video. Thanks.